Hope you all are doing great. In this video, we will have a look at AWS Client VPN. So we will use this Client VPN to access private EC2 inside a private subnet inside a VPC. So by default, if an EC2 is running inside a VPC, which is virtual private cloud, you cannot touch that from outside or your local machine. So we will create one Client VPN, and we will use a VPN software to get into that virtual private network and then access the EC2. So if you are just interested in the setting up the Client VPN, you can skip ahead, but I'm gonna actually set up VPC, EC2, subnets and all that stuff, right? So let's go. Okay, first thing first, let's see what are we going to set up in AWS, right? First thing, we're gonna have a VPC, and inside that VPC we will have, say, a private subnet, and inside that we will have host our EC2, right? So for a user, say here, he wants to access this EC2, maybe there is some web app running, or he wants to get this shell access, right? But because this EC2 is under the VPC, virtual private cloud, he cannot touch that EC2. That's the purpose of the VPC, right? So to solve this, one thing is to just have a bastion host, which is to have another EC2 in another subnet, which is a public subnet, and then the user gets the access to bastion host and then to the private. So that's another stuff, but today we are gonna look at the virtual private network. So what it's gonna do is, so what we will do is we will set up a VPN endpoint here, and when the user connects to that particular VPN, the VPN gonna check which subnet it is associated with, okay? And after that, and next it's gonna check which IP ranges it is authorized to serve, basically, right? And the next thing, if it found or it is hit with the IP which it is authorized to serve, it's gonna check its route, how he can how the VPN network can serve that particular route, right? So that's the three things that VPN needs to work, right? So when we want VPN to serve this particular EC2, we will associate this VPN with this subnet, and we will authorize the CIDR range, which is maybe for the VPC. CIDR is the IP ranges that we have defined for VPC, subnet and everything else, right? And route is how it's gonna reach to the EC2, or maybe which IP or source IPs are allowed, right? For those, actually it's gonna check one more thing here, which is the security groups, if it is allowed to touch those EC2s or resources or not, right? So these are the couple of things that the VPN will check. So coming to the CIDR, right, what we are going to have is we will have 10.0.0 slash, say, 20. It's a lot of IPs, right? And for the subnet, we can have, say, 10.0.0 slash, say, 24, maybe a couple of IPs, and we will assign one IP to this guy. Not assign it, we'll get it the private IP from this subnet accordingly, because we are not attaching any elastic IP to it. And one thing to note here is that when defining this VPN client, it needs a CIDR range, and this CIDR range should not overlap with this VPC CIDR range, right? So we will go ahead with 20, right? I think enough of the theory. let's set up the VPN and EC2 and all these stuff. So coming to the console, I'm gonna open up the VPC and let's create, I don't have any VPC in this particular region, so let's create a new VPC. I'm gonna say my VPC, and as we defined, we'll give it a range of 20, right? So there is one tool I usually use. Let me get that URL. Okay, so this is the URL I usually, or the calculator I usually use. So when we say we're gonna have this range, so you can put it here and say calculate, right? So you're gonna get 4,000 IPs, which is a lot of IPs, and this will be the range, right? So we can accordingly decide how many IPs we need. So if I just say, okay, let's reduce the range, so now we are left with 256 IPs. That's how actually you divide the CIDR ranges when creating multiple subnets, right? So let's go with 24, and I don't want IPv6, and let's create the VPC. So this will set up the VPC. Next, let's create a subnet, and we'll select my VPC, and for the range, let's go with this particular, because I'm gonna have, or maybe 26. So how many IPs I'll be having in this particular subnet? 64. So that's enough for the demo. Okay, so the zone, so this is good stuff. If you want to attach your virtual private network to multiple subnets, all those subnets should be in different availability zone. You cannot associate two subnets from the same availability zone to a single client VPN endpoint. Okay, so today we are going ahead with only one. So let's choose this particular, and oh, this is not the CIDR, so I should move it here. And this is my, say, subnet 1, and I should mention it private. Okay, and that's it. Let's create the subnet. And we have our subnet, we have our VPC. Now let's create an EC2. Let's go EC2. So I don't have any EC2 running in this region, so let's launch a new EC2. I'm gonna go ahead with the Amazon provided Linux, and I'm gonna choose obviously the free tier. So this is the VPC, and I'm creating it in private subnet that we just created. So you see auto assign public IP is set to disable, which is coming from the subnet settings before, because we have not done that setting. If you want to do that, you might edit the subnet settings and enable auto assign public addresses, right? So this is a private, so I don't want any public IPs. DNS, placement, capacity, these are all going to be the same. Now IAM rule, let it be. So let's go to the next step, storage. I'm gonna go ahead with this. Tags, let's skip this for the demo video. And yeah, the security group, right? So say private SG, and for this let's actually remove everything. I'll be adding the security group rules later when we require them, okay, according to our needs. So for now, we don't have any rules in the security group. Review and launch. So let's launch this EC2. I don't have this red robin, so what I'll go ahead do is create a new pair. So demo VPN. I'm anyways gonna demolish all this what we are setting up right now. So I'll save it to my desktop and launch the instance. Okay, this is gonna take a couple of minutes or maybe a few seconds. Let's get back to the instance list. So this is in pending state. Now what we have achieved is we have VPC, we have subnet, and we have one EC2 running in there. Okay, what next? Okay, so the next thing is we want to establish a connection between the user and the EC2. So one thing is straightforward. You can use the PEM files, that is the private key, to connect to the EC2, and you need to open that 22 SSH port and you can easily connect. But if you are having a team who are non-AWS users and want to connect to, say, a web app running in EC2, right? You don't want to distribute that PEM files to all those users, right? That's not secure enough. So what you do is you create a VPN client endpoint. So let's jump in that. So in the VPC section, you come down to virtual private network and then client VPN endpoints. Okay, and here you create a new endpoint, say VPN, and you need to define the CIDR range, right? Remember we discussed this has to be different from the VPC range, so better go with something like this, right? So 20.0.0/ another thing is the minimum is the 22 blocks should be fixed. So if you are going with 26, this is not gonna work, so we'll see. Another thing you should notice that once this endpoint is created, you cannot change this CIDR range, so better decide beforehand. Now the next part is the server certificates. For that we actually need the certificate generation tool, that is, so let's search for the steps. Here are the certificates generation steps. Here for the mutual authentication, which means we will be authenticating using the certificates. Okay, so we need to download OpenVPN, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and download 64-bit installer. I'm gonna install OpenVPN. So I'm gonna customize it because I want these SSL utilities, these easy RSA, right? So I'm gonna install it now. Okay, OpenVPN is installed. Next we need to fire up these commands. Okay, so let's open up PowerShell in admin mode. Let's go to C program files, OpenVPN, EasyRSA, and start the EasyRSA shell. Next we're gonna copy this command to initiate the environment. Oh, we forgot the dot. Okay, so the environment is initiated. Next, build the chain. So we need to provide the CM, that is the common name. So let's go with the ID nodes. Alright, next let's create the server certificates. So it is written to the file the private keys. Next, create the client certificates. Here you can have your domain name and all that stuff. For this time I'm gonna just press enter. Okay, so we have client certificates, and that's all we need. Next thing is we're gonna copy all these certificates to a particular directory. Let me do that. I'll be back. Okay, so I've created a folder with the name certs, and I'm gonna copy the certificates from OpenVPN directory. So the first one we need is PKI CA cert, copy and paste. Next one is from the issued, we need two certificates, the server and the client. So these are the two certificates. Let's copy them to the directory, and from private we need both server and client. So we need these two guys, right? So we have our certificates now in a particular directory. And next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna import all these certificates to our AWS instance. Okay, so for that, this is a command. Okay, next we are going to import these certificates. Okay, for that let's go to this directory, say search, and I'm gonna take this command and paste it here. You must specify a region, right? Okay, let's try if I can mention it like this. Okay, we have successfully imported our certificate for the server. Let's import the client certificate now, and I'm gonna mention region US East 1. So this is it. So we have imported both the certificates, and we can verify that in our ACM, which is certificate manager. Should go back to US East 1. Okay, we do have our certificates. Now where were we? So we need to mention the server certificates. After adding them, you can click refresh, you get the server certificate, and you need to click mutual authentication because you wanna be authenticating using these certificates. So just like the client. Now you can choose to enable the login, but for now I'm gonna not gonna enable this, and also not the connect handler. The important thing, right? You can mention DNS server. I don't know how these goes around, but the very important point here is enable split tunnel. Okay, so I'm gonna explain this to you for now. So what happens is, right, so we mentioned that our VPN CIDR range is in 20s, and our subnets and VPCs are in 10s, right? So when a user connects to this virtual private network, the user is assigned one IP from 20s, right? Maybe he will get, say, 20.0.10.2, something like that, right? But once we are into this network and we want to get into the VPC, this VPN actually translates your 20 series IP to one IP taken from the subnets that is associated to the VPN, right? So in our demo, we're gonna associate this subnet. So this VPN will translate the user's 20 range IP to the 10 range IP so that it can get into the VPC. So that's one part, right? And once it has the 10 range IP, it can go in and it needs to find the route to reach this EC2. So we will define that all the requests with the source of 10 IPs can go to this particular EC2. That is a route, right? And once it finds the route, after going through authorized and security groups, it finds the route and it reaches the EC2. That is okay. That's what we want. So you initiate a SSH session for this particular EC2's private IP. You initiate it from here. Your VPN converts your 20 range IP to the 10 range IP. You find a route and you reach here. That's all perfect. But now you are into this VPN, and if you hit in your browser, say www.google.com, the same thing will happen. Your request will reach here at the VPN and you will get a 10 IP, and next you are finding a route to reach google.com, but you do not have google.com servers in your VPC, right? And so it won't be resolved and it won't be able to find a route to reach google.com, and your request will fail, right? So in short, what this means is that your users will lose the internet connectivity on their machine once they are connected to this VPN, because you do not have a route. So to solve this, one thing is you can define a route to say 0.0.0.0/0 and attach it to the internet gateway, right? So say you attach internet gateway to VPC, and then Subnet has got that route. One thing is that, but the problem with that is, now if in the morning the user has connected to your VPN and all your 10 or 20 member teams are using the VPN whole day, it's gonna mess up with the bill. You're gonna get a huge bill. Why are you serving all the internet traffic through your VPC? What's the purpose, right? So another option you have is to choose and enable this split tunnel. So what this option does is, rather than matching the routes here in the AWS environment, when the user connects to your network, these routes are gonna pushed to your user client. So these routes are gonna pushed and saved in your VPN client software at the user's machine, right? So your VPN software will do the routing and like if else condition checks. For example, when you are gonna do SSH to this EC2's private IP, so these routes gonna match here. Okay, for this IP I should reach to this VPN and then here. So it's gonna route your VPN client software gonna route your 10.0.0.0 series request to the VPN, and for all other requests which doesn't match the route defined here, it's gonna use your internet connectivity that you have at your home. So this is why it is called split tunnel, because it is splitting the VPN tunnel into two. One where you have defined the routes. Only for those routes this tunnel will be used, and for the rest of the routes which are not defined here, your internet connectivity will be used, right? Makes sense? So do click on this option if you want your users to be connected to the internet. Next, let's choose the VPC, and I'm gonna choose the private security group. Port is same. I'm not gonna have self-service portal, but you can. This will generate a nice website where your team members can download the client configuration, but you can just email them, right? So that is it. So let's create once. Okay, so this was the thing I was talking to you, that minimum range should be 22. That's why we, just to check this error, I wanted to show you guys. So once it should be in the range of 16 to 22, I believe, as of the time I'm recording this video. So let's go with the 22 and let's create with this VPN endpoint. Now the status you see here is pending associate, because we are yet to associate the subnet with this particular endpoint. So let's do that. Go to the association tabs and click on associate, choose the VPC, which is my VPC in my case, and choose the subnet with which you want to associate this client VPN network. So if you have multiple subnets defined in your VPC, the one you associate are the ones you can connect multiple subnets to your VPN, right? So the ones you connect to the VPNs, from those CIDR, the IP will be translated by the VPN. So when the request is coming from here with the 20 range, and then this is gonna convert to a IP taken from the subnets, and those subnets are the ones which are associated to the VPN. Make sense? Okay, so let's select this one and let's click associate. This is gonna take some time, around 5 to 10 minutes, so be sure to wait. So we are going with this security group, and for authorization, I'm gonna allow only the CIDRs or the CIDRs, the IP range from, let's go to VPC. So let's say we have our VPC with the CIDR range of this, and I am saying in this authorization that this particular client VPC endpoint is only authorized for the request whose destination IP lies between this range. Okay, so if you want to open up to the internet, just go with the 0.0 stuff, but I want this VPN network to only allow the request that lies in between this range, and you can very well use that particular tool to check this is the range. So your EC2 instance should be lying between this range in order to be accessed by your clients. Okay, now let's add the authorization. You can use AD users to restrict the user groups specifically, but for now let's go with allow all the users. So next is the route table. So we have already have the default route, which is tied to our VPC endpoint, and that's all we need. So this is gonna use the NAT for the address translation, which is internal to the VPC. So that is it. Now we have defined the association, we have the security group, we have the authorization, and we have a route to reach to our EC2 instance. This is gonna take some time. I'm gonna pause the video and come back. And one more thing, while this process is going on, next stuff we need to do is download this client configuration. Okay, download this file. All right, so I'm gonna save it to my desktop, and I'm gonna open it with VS Code. Okay, all right, so one thing we want here is that this is the chain for CA, right? We need to enter the certificate and the key for the clients, right? And for that, what we will do is I can show you the steps as well. So this is to associate the subnet, and then this is to authorize to access the particular network, some additional network if you want internet access, that's what I was saying, and download the VPN configuration, right? So what you want to do is you want these two tags to be copy pasted here, and now take the content of client certificate. Okay, so let's go here. So this is the client certificate. I'm gonna open it here. I'm gonna copy it all and paste it just between these two tags. Okay, and next is the key, which is the private key of the client. So this is the key. I'm gonna drop it here. copy and paste it here, right? So we have the key and the certificate. Next thing is to assign a subdomain to your endpoint. This is mentioned there, so I'm gonna go ahead with this, and this is all you need for this client configuration. You can just forward this particular file to all your team members and they'll be able to connect to the VPN network. So another thing, so I believe I already have the OpenVPN installed, so I can open that. And where is it running? Yeah, it's running. So click on import and import file. Okay, and then choose this configuration. So I saved it on my desktop. I'm gonna choose it from there. Where is my desktop? The file is downloaded, config VPN. I'm gonna open it. Okay, and then you can get the option to connect. So let's see if that association has been finished or not. Where is, okay, let's refresh that. It's still pending, it takes time. So okay, so we have done this part, and then this is the random string I was talking. I mentioned the ID nodes, so you can mention anything you want, and your endpoint should be like this after the modification, and that's it. You will be good to go to connect to the internet. Alright, so we have got the status available for this endpoint. Now straightforward, looks okay for now. Obviously we won't be able to do the SSH because we don't have that rule defined in our security groups, but we should be able to connect to this network and get a IP from the 20 range, and let's try to do that. So click on this, click on connect. This is doing all the handshakes and all that stuff. And let's see if it is, yeah, it is green, and you can see that we have the IP from the 20 range, right? So in order to check, okay, let me open the console first, and I believe I downloaded my PEM file to the desktop. So in order to do the SSH connection, established SSH connection, we need to mention that PEM file, and then the user, EC2 user, and the private IP. For the private IP, let's go to instances, click on, and this is the private IP. Okay, so this is the private IP, and copy this. This is not gonna happen, right? Because it is reaching till the security groups. So I'm gonna cancel this out. So what's happening is this has the 20 range, this is reaching here, and then this is translated to some 10s IP, and association check, authorization check, because we have mentioned this range for the authorization, and it is failing at the security group level, right? So let's allow it through the security groups. Security inbound rules, let's check this. So this is the fun part, right? Either you can directly go with where is SSH? Okay, this one, 22 port. You can say, okay, just allow SSH from any IP. Or what you can do is, because we saw that this 20 range IP will be translated to the subnet IP, so we can actually use the subnet as the source, the IP range of the subnet. So we'll go to the subnets, and we will copy the CIDR range of the subnet. So now the SSH will be allowed only from the IP from this range, right? And yeah, save the rules. We should be able to connect. And yes, we were able to reach the network. Okay, we hit. Okay, this is related to the PEM file permission. So what I'm gonna do is, okay, now that's a challenge. If you are on Linux, you can just use chmod 400 and then the file, right? But because I am on Windows, so what's happening is right now this is the permission for this demo VPN, right? But if I try to change this is not gonna work. I can show you, it will be something like 500 because it doesn't work on 555. Okay, so in order to make it work, I actually need to copy this from Windows desktop inside my WSL. So let's do that. Copy RCP. I'm getting confused. Okay, CP the demo VPN to say the home. Just copy it in the home, right? So now let's do this and let's try again. And now I'm gonna run that command one more time, but remember this time I am referring to the PEM file inside my WSL instance. Okay, so this should work. Alright, we got it. So we are into the private instance using virtual private network connected using Client VPN endpoint. So that was it. I hope you learned something. Till next time, take care.